All right, welcome back to Sweet Science Boxing and MMA here in Hawthorne, California, with another episode of Beat the Count, and we have more guests than I've ever had up here at one time. Just so you guys know, this is a record for this show, but I feel like I should start from right to left. So we have the third man in charge, so you can settle disputes between me and Stax today.
That's right.
Referee Ray Corona.
Hey,
welcome. Thanks for coming down, brother.
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course. My gracious co-host, Anthony Stax Saldana of Supreme Boxing.
Man, back again. Thank you for having me on, man.
Very welcome. And, of course, we have trainer Ben Lira. How's it going, Ben?
Very good, very good. Thank you for having me here, and let's see how this comes out.
All right. I can't wait. And then undefeated prospect and Ray's son. I'm not sure where he falls in the 7.
He's the youngest.
The youngest. Okay.
The baby.
The baby. But we got, of course, Adrian Corona. What's up, Adrian?
Yeah, hey. How's everyone doing? Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, man. Thanks for coming down. I appreciate all you guys coming down. Hopefully it's, we're all trying to squeeze in here, but hopefully you guys are comfortable. Let me know if you need anything. We'll help you out. I forgot to mention, those are your things up there. Did Stax tell you that?
No.
That's all your stuff. You guys help yourself to those waters and
All right.
any of the
cool,
stacks that are in there. That stuff's for you guys. All right. What should we start with, Anthony? What do you think?
Man, I don't know. We could start anywhere, actually. Let's start with the prospect, man. Let's start with the youngster, Adrian, man. Adrian Corona. Man, thank you for being on today. So, you're a newly signed prospect, correct?
Not signed yet, but yeah, I'm a new prospect.
Not signed, okay. But you are fighting under the 360 banner right now.
Yes, sir.
A few shows in Hollywood, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what's your record?
My record right now is 5-0.
5-0.
Undefeated.
5-0, undefeated.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
I watched you at, did you do a fight at Commerce recently? Commerce Casino?
I believe my third fight was at Commerce Casino with Roy.
Awesome.
Under Roy, yeah.
Awesome. And then most recently, Hollywood Avalon. Do you have any fights coming up that you're aware of?
My next fight is July 28th.
July
at the
28th.
Avalon, back at the Avalon, and on another edition of the Hollywood Fight Nights.
Yeah, I've seen you, and we can get tickets for that fight right on Instagram. I've seen you guys posting it on Instagram and stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay.
On Instagram, yep.
Awesome.
So should they just inbox you?
Yeah, just DM me, and I'll get those tickets out to you guys.
And do you know who you're facing already?
We don't have an opponent yet.
Okay. Looking forward to that. What do you think?
Oh, I think it'll be a good fight. And you train with Ben Lira, correct?
Yes, sir.
The best.
The best.
The best.
The best.
All 5 fights you've been training with Ben?
Yes, sir.
And what was your amateur background like? Did you have an extensive amateur career?
I didn't have an extensive amateur career. The highest I went in amateurs is nationals. I went to nationals 2016, and I came out with the bronze.
You came out with the bronze?
Yeah, with the bronze.
Cool.
Three in the nation.
And Ben, were you with him for that?
No, I wasn't.
That was my fault.
That was your. What do you mean?
I don't know about that one, but being that he, my schedule and that actually is really kind of. I'm sure that Ray realized that working at the summit with Abel and on a weekly basis, it kind of hinders being down the bottom and having to work with just regular fighters down the bottom. So it's kind of difficult. But right now that he's Ray realized that maybe this would be a better thing for him, and as far as his development stages, that he asked me if I would be working with him, and we've been making it work, and let's see where it takes us.
So how do you guys work that out? Do you go up to the summit and train up there, or are you coming back and forth, Ben?
I go up there and come back, yeah.
Okay.
I have to go up there, and obviously, even I think next week, Abel's got 3 fights, and I just talked to him this morning and adjusting the schedule to where he's going to go to France, and then they got the Texas fight. Actually, they have 2 fights in France. And then you got Murat fighting in Texas, so it's all within that one week, not actually that 2 weeks. 1 week going up there, then coming back, and then having to deal with the following fight. So I have to be up there, and that's how that goes on.
And mind you guys, just to note, as a child, 8 years old, I met Ben Lira.
Oh,
and
really?
Then, yes. And then he trained my oldest son, Ray Corona Jr., and then I knew all the time I got to go with Ben for the simple fact, in my opinion, he cares about his fighters. He just doesn't care like, hey, let's just get you a fight. You're not going to fight until you're ready. You know, and I just know he has my son. If it all ended today, it went good. It went good.
How did you come to meet each other?
Well, you know, I was a troubled youth, so we used to go to El Monte right there in the old mall, and Ben and his brother had a gym out there. And what was that on? Remember the mall?
Yeah, on Granada.
Yeah,
right there in the
Granada.
mall. Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't remember me, but I remembered them.
Yeah,
I was the fat kid that had a decent. I could fight, but I always had weight issues. You know.
So you trained as a young man,
Yes.
as well. Okay.
Yes.
So you trained for a number of years, and then
Between vacations, I'd come on, get, you know.
And how did you get into refereeing?
Well, I mean, let me word this right, because some people run with it wrong. After I knew boxing was done as far as training and stuff, straight out, I just asked Ben, I'd like to be a referee. And he said, you know what? Put your work in. You know, you're just not going to just walk in. So I did like 4 years in the amateurs. And then after the amateurs was done, Ben said, you know what? I'll make a couple phone calls and you put your work in there. And if it's God's will, it'll happen. And thank God it happened, man.
So for you, that's what, 20, 25 years or thereabouts of refereeing, or
20 years now.
20 years?
1998.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah. Minus 1 year, but that's another story, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, things happen, man.
Yeah, things happen. But thank God I got my life. It was that kid's fault over there. It was his fault.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. We'll stay away from that
Yeah,
story,
we'll
man.
stay away from that one.
Yeah. People in Southern California, you guys already know, so I don't
Yeah,
gotta go there.
Yeah.
So, as far as refereeing goes, man, and as far as the California, do you also referee internationally and nationally across the United States? Do you ever get called by different sanctioning bodies,
Yeah.
WBC, WBA, to go to different states to referee?
Oh, right now I belong to the WBC and the NABF, but you know what? I've been blessed. I've refereed in Puerto Rico, Panama, Russia, Mexico numerous times. And so, yeah, I've been all over. Thank God, you know. Blessed life, bro. Blessed life.
And in boxing, man, as far as, I want to say the ABC rules of boxing throughout the United States, what can boxing do to basically bring the refereeing side together so they all have the same rules, man? Because I've seen some fights on television, I want to say maybe in Kansas, where they couldn't find the damn referee, man. Referees falling down, not knowing the rules, calling standing 8 counts when there's no standing 8 counts, man. And also in California. And nothing bad on Andy Foster and the California Commission, but there's a big difference between you guys out here in Southern California and those Northern California guys, man, because it just seems like the program runs a lot better, a lot smoother out here.
Well, I mean, just from what I know, Andy Foster holds us accountable, bro. He does. He holds us accountable. As far as I know, we're the most trained state in all the world. We have more fights than even Las Vegas. Great referees out there, but Andy, we actually have a training, our regular yearly training on the 14th in Sacramento, and we're held accountable. Like Andy Foster says, you're only remembered as your last fight. So with that said, I can't speak on the other states, but I know that California is held accountable. Are we perfect? There's no perfect state, but we're constantly being trained. We're constantly being, Jack Reese is one of our main trainers, and he's always on top of us. Pat Russell, the late Marty Dinkin, you know, so Andy's on top of us, bro. He's on top of us.
So in the 20 years that you've been doing this, and obviously you've been training over that span of time too, how much has it changed the expectations of your being a referee or your being a trainer? Because like there's so many rules that we're not necessarily aware of as boxing fans. What you can bring to the ring with you, in terms of what cut men are able to utilize, the rules that a referee has to follow in terms of stoppages after 4 rounds versus after 3 rounds versus whatever the case is, state by state. Does that change a lot? Are we talking about changes every year, or you guys pretty much feel like it's been similar to what you've experienced over the course of your respective careers?
Ben can answer that one way better than me, bro.
No, there's been a lot of changes, and there's been a lot of changes where it's really kind of, it's more in the safety of the fighter.
Okay.
And the changing of the gloves, the medical issues that happen that back then where they were just not policed. At that I guess you would say that when you went back to that time, you would say fighting was fighting. Now it's about, there's an art to it, and that has been developed by the amateur development of the fighters. We're more into that as far as their experience that they've gotten during their amateur career, as opposed to then, which they didn't, was very minimum. Professionals, guys that turned professional didn't have to have 20 fights or 30 fights. They, most of them came right off from the gym, and they wanted to fight. It was hungrier then. It still is, but I think that there's more. Like I said, there's more development into one becoming a professional and what's expected of them. So that's changed, and then and that's with time. And then, of course, the rulings and stuff like that the officials, and now they have to be more aware of. It didn't matter what you put on the hands then, and now, obviously,
sure.
It's one of the main points.
Well, let me ask you something about that, because we got a couple of guys who've been around boxing for a very long time, and we have a young and undefeated prospect, so someone who's experiencing it now. So a lot of people will say, for instance, that old school fighters, if you take it back to like maybe the 1980s, things like that they were tougher, right? You'll hear that a lot. Those guys were just a lot tougher. And I think sometimes a lot of that is attributed to the fact that there was a period of time where they're fighting 15-round fights and things like that. But those aren't necessarily things that are in the fighter's hands. Like, you don't get to decide if you're fighting 15 rounds or 12 rounds. There's just a limit now. He's not allowed to fight beyond the 12-round thing. Do you guys who've been in the sport for a very long time, do you feel like fighters were tougher, like back in 1980? And what is your position on that? Do you look at it and go like, man, these guys were so tough? And Adrian, or are you thinking like, no, they're just men. They're just fighters like everybody else?
I think it's just more that they're men, Like Mike Tyson said, the tough man is going to get hurt in this sport, You got to be smart. You got to be thinking with your mind when you're in the ring.
That's a good point. What do you guys think? Were fighters tougher back in the day, Ray?
Well, of course, that was me, man. No, again, Ben can answer that one way better than me, because he's been around 50, 60 years, and he knows from the old days. I mean, one of my greatest fighters that I liked was Ray Boom Boom Mancini.
Yeah.
I just love the way he fight, and Lupi Aquino, one of Ben's fighters. I love the way he fought, So, but yet I have fighters that I love nowadays. Adrian Corona, I think he's a great fighter, Luis Feliciano, I think he's a great. I refereed his fight, and man, this guy just works the body just ridiculous, bro. Ridiculous.
Real quick before I have Ben answer that, I just want to give a few shout outs, man. We want to shout out Nancy Rodriguez from the WBC. She's saying hello to everybody, man. She's watching.
Hello, Nancy.
Kenya Enriquez, the champion from Mexico, female champion. Richard Ortiz, he's saying what's up. We have Serge Estrada, Cutman Serge Estrada tuning in. He said,
Big Serge, what's up?
Big Serge said to tell everybody hello. Now we're going to go ahead and get back to Ben and let Ben answer that about the toughness of fighters, man.
I think the time is what made him tougher at that point, during that time, I mean. So during that time, survival was a lot harder. And so being that, they didn't really, as we say, have that background in their amateur careers, the fact that just surviving was the key for them to do something with themselves, and have to train as hard as they, when you think about those times, you gotta remember that there was fighters that could fight one place in 1 week, 2 weeks later fight somewhere else. So as far as their condition was really fighting. So they got the experience, they got the condition, and of course, if how hungry they are showed you how tough they were going to be.
And speaking about the hunger and the fights back then, man, I think one thing I've noticed from studying some of the past fighters in the late 70s and early 80s is that they were literally hungry, man. These guys didn't have parents that could pay $100 a month or $200 a month growing up as a kid so they can work out in the gym. These guys fought and turned professional and fought 10 to 15 times a year, though, so they could get a few $100, so they could have something to actually eat, man, so they could fight and make a career of it, because you didn't have fighters back then walking around with Floyd Mayweather money. You didn't have these guys on social media, these kids having Apple iPhones and whatnot, man. These guys were tough, and they were from the streets, and they were fighting to survive. I think that's the difference in what you say toughness is. Not necessarily toughness as taking a punch and toughness in training, but just
the ganas of it.
The culture, the toughness of the culture, and having to grow up and become a professional fighter because that's all they knew.
Yeah.
Hey, check it out though. There is a couple things about that. One is not fighters don't just walk around with Floyd Mayweather money. That's like a bad comparison. There's one cat who does that, or two cats who does.
Even now,
like that.
but now,
and a lot of the fighters now, they still. You look at these guys, and it's not like they came from a place where they had all kinds of iPhones and tablets and stuff like that. Bud Crawford didn't come from a wealthy family. He came from a situation that, and a lot of times you see the most. The fighters who are competing at the highest level didn't necessarily come from the...
And that's why they're on top. And that's why they're
perhaps.
on top.
But I'm saying it's the same now as it was then. It's not like you made it sound like now everybody's just got the iPad and they're rolling around and decide to box.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when you come from that culture, when you come from nothing, you have that much more will and want to me. And I'm not saying that somebody that has money doesn't want that will or want to become a champion. But it's just
they don't have that comfort.
They don't have these people didn't have that comfort.
Well,
you have a different mentality.
Let me say this. I'm blessed. I have 7 children. Adrian lived in a good household. I mean, do we have a perfect family? No, we don't. But you know what? He didn't live in the so-called ghetto. I raised him around the neighborhood so he wouldn't be street naive, though. But at the same time, all my boys, thank God, and my girls, but Adrian always had a winning attitude. When he was playing football, he was just first string, He was a wide receiver. He played quarterback. He was smaller, but he was just had that winning attitude. And I see it in his boxing. And I know, from what I know Ben, if he didn't have that attitude, Ben would just say, it's not working out, and move on. Or you know what, Ray, it's not for me. Our relationship ain't going to work. So when going back to like the ghetto and all that, I think it's just the individual person, how he was raised and what he wants in life. If he wants to be a winner, he's going to shoot for it. Even if he lives in Beverly Hills or East LA, Well,
exactly. They still have to want it.
Yeah, they got to want it.
They still have to want it. I'm sure, Ben, you see it a lot, not just with the fighters in the States, but being up there with Abel internationally, you see a lot of these guys come from Kazakhstan and Russia and some of these third world countries. Tell us a little bit about those guys.
Right, very, very determined, very hungry, because, obviously they don't have that there. Their cultural is very strict. It's about, working hard, and working hard. So when they get back, when they leave there, and then now they come to a country that's unknown to them, they have the same mentality. The mentality is all they know is that they're going to work hard. They're going to work hard. They're not going to complain about staying in a camp for 2-3 weeks, months, and even years to say that, we've had guys that come in and they'll be there for Sergey Bogachev. When have you gone? You haven't gone home in about 6-7 months.
Yeah,
okay, so being that you're here and you're comfortable and you're enjoying that, you feel like you want to go home every once in a while. You've got that feeling of, missing, mom and dad, brothers and sisters. But still, the fact that mentality that's been put into you keeps you from, slowing down or accepting that, we're supposed to go back, and after every fight, there's 2 weeks, 3 weeks where I'm gonna, not do anything and relax. They don't know that. And it just, like I said, it's just where you're from, the culture that you live in, whether you are in Germany, whatever, it just Japanese kids that come. They don't. It's not even a thought to them. Here, we have a comfort.
Yeah.
Not that we don't have fight. I don't think that that they can be tougher, or they're better. It's just that they're more comfortable. I guess that's the best word to use it. They're comfort, and they're allowed to, and it's okay that they take a week off or 2 weeks or 3 weeks off. But with the other ones coming from abroad, it's not okay. This is your job. This is what you do. You know, you went to work, and you're going to work, 24/7, if that's what it takes. But their growing up has always been that. So I think that and it works for them. And again, you go back and you say, it doesn't mean that they're better. Because obviously, we have better fighters here in the States that they do over there. They might be tougher, they might be stronger, and I don't want to knock them. I hope they're not listening to this. But you're not all that talented. And that's why you're coming here. You're coming here because it's going to
The talented
develop.
fighters are here, no, Ben?
Right. Your skills are going to be more improved. We're going to work on your skills. We know you're tough. We know you're strong. But and discipline, that goes along with it. But do you really know the strategy of the game? The chess game that's involved? Not really. Because you're back in the old farm days over there.
I think that's a great distinction, too, because there is, even when we say fighters from yesterday are tougher, that doesn't necessarily make them smarter, more skilled, or even superior athletically, because you look at some of the fighters today, and they are absolutely some of the most athletic fighters that we've ever seen. Undoubtedly, when you look at their physique, the way that they train and condition their muscles, the attention that they give to it, just because the science has progressed and things have advanced beyond what we could do, in 1970 and things like that. So toughness doesn't mean all of those things. It doesn't mean that they're more athletic, doesn't mean they're smarter or more talented.
And it doesn't mean that they can't go 15 rounds if it was 15 rounds.
Yeah, that's
even
true.
Though somebody can say, yeah, but in those days they could go 15 rounds. Well, but if we had it, we still had that, they'd learn to go 15 rounds.
Yeah.
And the development and everything will still be there.
Exactly. The athleticism today is good enough where these guys could go 15 rounds if need be. And one thing that that you're bringing up too is stylistically, the fighters nowadays are fighting. Their styles are so much more different than the rock'em sock'em robot type of fights in the 80s that we were accustomed to. And you look at some of the fighters, including Terry Norris, man, who now is suffering from pugilistic dementia and is basically having the same effects that Ali did. Why? Because he fought that style that was everybody in the 80s was accustomed to seeing. They were accustomed to seeing these knockdown, drag-out type of fights, the Boom Boom Mancini type of fights when he fought, Dooku Kim, those type of fights where somebody just got hit in the head 500 damn times, but that's what people wanted, and that's what everybody knew because the style never changed. It went from decade to decade to decade, and then somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s, the science started evolving. Phones, technology, things started changing.
Always blaming the phones, man. It's all the phone's fault. My goodness.
And the refereeing, that's where the refereeing has improved. Because if you go back to those days, you're going to find out that that was expected of them to be, as you said, tough. We're going to go till one falls or, and is completely annihilated. Where now the safety, as I said before, with the improvement of the officiating, to saying now we're not going to let you go there. So when a fight gets stopped a little bit early, that some feel that too early, I think you have to weigh that. I think you have to weigh that the fact that now we're protecting them because they're finding out that the fact that he's going to be talking through his nose when he's 50-some years old, and not knowing, losing a little this and losing a little of that, that it's going to affect them. During those times, that was expected of you to fight like that. So there's a lot of changes, and again, we go back. I don't know that. So then you can't honestly say that they were tougher then. My opinion, because I've seen them from that time to this time, that they were tougher. We use that a lot, or I don't, but
you hear it a lot.
Yeah, you hear it a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking on that again, when we go to our training session, Mr. Foster's always saying, you know what, safety is our main concern. If you stopped it too early, you're going to get ridiculed, you're going to get booed. But what if you stopped it too late? You know what I mean?
Something you're going to have to live with on your conscience.
Yeah. And you'll answer for it too as well. I mean, if it was just an injury and a one-punch incident, or you got a knockout, okay, that's that's something different. But if you just let them take a beating, when sometimes you have to save a fighter. I remember Jack Reset told us, if it's a 12-round fight and he's lost 8 rounds of that 12 rounds and just constantly getting beaten up, but he's still fighting back, but there's nothing on there, why are you letting him? Why? You're going to get booed if you stop the fight. You are. Because, you know, the fan that's paying $25 or the fan that doesn't really know boxing just wants to see just bloodshed and brutality, he's going to boo you. But you know what? That kid's going to go home tonight.
You know, you're one of the only referees that I've heard, you know, and I'm sure others have do it. I'm not saying you're the only one, but I've heard you, you know, actually encourage the corner, hey, man, have your guys show me something. And talk to them in between rounds or during the fight. Taking too many shots, man. Show me something. Show me something. Show me something.
I got that from Jack, too, because he'd always say, before you stop a fight, tell him in the dressing room, you know what, if I'm thinking if you're taking too many blows, before I stop the fight, I'm going to tell you, show me something. Fight back. Tira. You know what I mean? And if they don't, you're telling me you can't. So I've just, every instruction, that's what I say, man. If you don't show me nothing, and if I'm yelling at you, I'm looking to stop that fight.
You know, there's a lot of little subtle moves that you do in the ring as well that I don't think the regular fan notices when they're watching on TV. For instance, there was a fight between a Panamanian kid that had came up and fought Robert Guerrero at the Honda Center. You were refereeing the fight, and their feet got tangled, and you had stomped your foot and tapped your leg.
Oh, yeah, they tripped.
There was a knockdown. You didn't call it a knockdown, even though there was a punch. And then afterwards, during the replay, I remember going back and watching it, you had explained to me, watch my foot. I tapped my foot, I tapped my leg.
To say that it was a trip.
Yeah. And that was basically your signal to the judges to say, hey, it was a slip. You know, you had seen their feet got tangled up before the punch had even got thrown. They were already tangled up, and then you made that move where people were saying, oh, it was a punch, it was a punch, it was a punch.
Yeah, and we train on that. That's what Jack says. You got to sell the call to that guy that's in the nosebleed section and let him know, oh, it was a trip, you know. The referee called it a trip. Yeah, because you want to keep everybody involved. You don't want to, you know what I mean? You don't want to be jump the gun and say, oh, that was a low blow. But it's like if it was on the belt line and there was no major how could I say, damage, just tell him, you know, you could just tell the guy, hey, just keep it up, man. But, you know what I mean? But if it was damaging, then you could either stop it, have an evaluation, or you could take a point, you know, which I don't want to take a point. But in all reality, since you're on that thing, we don't have to give a second chance, a first chance. If you feel it was a flagrant foul, you could take a point. But sometimes the fans will be like, oh, well, you didn't even give him an extra, you know, a warning or anything. Hey, a damaging foul is a damaging foul, you know. Just like some guys, they like to hit on the thigh. You know, that's a Charlie horse. And that can really mess up your leg for a round or two, you know. And a lot of fans don't see that, you know. Yeah.
Is there any extra pressure on you, Adrian, getting into that ring, knowing that your dad's a referee, knowing that he knows a lot of people, you know, a lot of these judges, a lot of these refs are his coworkers, you know? Is there extra pressure on you to go out there and perform and actually to try to perform better than what you're training for?
I don't really feel any pressure. I mean, he's my dad, you know. It's not like he's my trainer or nothing, you know. But, nah, as far as all the pressure no, I just focus on the fight. I just focus on what's in front of me. And that's what I'm focusing on. I'm not really worried about who's watching or if my dad's there, you know. I'm just worried about the fight.
So are there specific rules around, like, conflicts of interest between you two? Do you get to work shows that he fights on or anything?
I've never been asked to work a show that he's been, but I think just our ethics, the boss and Mr. Foster, Mark, Reyna, will just say, you know, you're not going to be appointed that show, you know. Plus, because I'm going to be a fan that day of my son.
Of course, yeah.
You know, me and my wife, we stress out alone, just him getting in there, you know. But it's never crossed my mind that they'd even put me on that show, you know. I wouldn't want to work it anyways because I'm being a fan there.
So how many shows do you work a year? Because you mentioned earlier, we have so many shows here in Southern California.
Yeah,
it's more than Las Vegas, anywhere else. So
MMA as well.
Exactly. So how many shows are you working every year, do you think?
Wow. I mean, since I came back from my my little vacation there, I've actually worked like 3 times a month, if not more. 4 times a month. Yeah, I've really been blessed, man.
And each one of those, I mean, the bouts are ranging anywhere, I assume, between 8 and 15. You'll handle a number of them. You judge as well? Or
Yes, but I haven't judged in a while, but yes, I do judge.
And is judging, because as your referee, I assume you're not necessarily focused on who's winning or who's not winning.
No.
So when you go and you sit down, it's time to judge. Is there a different mindset, or is there a different set of criteria and rules, a different cap that you have to put on to?
Well, you just got to focus. I mean, I had heard earlier that some people are talking to the people on the side of them, and you know that's a no-no. You got to stay focused, you know.
Yeah.
But with that said, in the defense of a judge, let me ask all the fans out there, the fans that are not major fans, the next time you want to criticize a judge, why don't you watch a fight next time? Before it starts, just turn off the volume. They're not coming for me, so. But anyways,
every show there's at least one set of sirens.
Next time you watch a fight, turn off at home on TV. Turn off the volume, and just judge each round 10-9. If there's a knockdown, 10-8. If there's 2 knockdown, 10-7. But somebody must be 10 and somebody must be 9. It can't be a 9-9. It can't be a 10-10. And these are the rules, guys. So next time, watch a fight with the volume off. And then at the end of the fight, you're going to, after adding them up, you're going to say, wow, that guy did win.
He's got a question on this.
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily a question so much
Just
as
be truthful.
I am being truthful. Do I do anything else on this show? It's not
That's
a question
right,
so
that's
much
right.
as a grievance with the sport of boxing, right? Which is that we at all levels discourage the idea that a round can be even, 10-10, right? And it is probably one of the number one reasons that we get scorecards that people disagree with, because what happens is when you look at a fight and it's really difficult to tell, you really don't know who won a round, and you're like, I just got to give that to someone. What you're going to do is you're going to find some subjective thing, something that you like better as a person, like, I like this better, and you'll pick that. And then what will happen is over a period of 12 rounds, for instance, you'll keep picking the same guy over and over and over. And the next thing you know, you get some lopsided 119 scorecard in a fight that everybody else saw as a very close fight. And that happens because we put pressure on judges. And I don't know who we is. It's not me. It's like whether it's the sanctioning body or the California State Athletic Commission or whoever it is. But we put pressure on judges. You have to pick a winner, even when it's completely unnecessary. There are many times when you could look it around and go, that's too close to call.
Let me throw a question right back at you. 3-minute round. One fighter is working the body and head just nonstop, 2 minutes, 50 seconds. And then that one guy that was getting the worst of the beating, but he's still fighting, just comes back and throws a vicious 1-2-3 hook. I mean, lands all 3 and drops him. Who wins the round?
The 10-8.
Yeah, if he was dropped, right? He's dropped.
So
It's a 10-8 round, yeah.
Don't forget, he was winning that round.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying.
This-
but you'll
this
get
isn't-
some controversial calls. We're saying, hey, I mean, that guy that dropped him, I mean, he should win the round, but yet he was getting his butt kicked for the whole 2 minutes, 40 seconds. But then you still can't steal the knockdown. And see, that's why there's rules in judging. That's why we go to training.
What if he doesn't drop him?
Yeah, so this is the question. What if he doesn't drop it?
Okay. And if he doesn't drop him, that was my second one. If he doesn't drop, the guy that was going body and head, ring generalship, ring, who was controlling that round?
See, this is the thing. So there's a number of people in here. We got 5 of us up here. There's another 5 of us out there. There's 10 people in here. Not one of us ever had to be taught how to judge
my
a
wife's
fight.
always right, so I can't go against her.
For sure. But the point is that not one of us ever had to be taught who won a fight. Meaning if 2 gentlemen were standing right here and they fought, at the end of us, we would all be able to tell you who won. And it's actually not that hard, right? So you would look at it and you go, and so let's say we watched 2 gentlemen fight right here for 3 minutes, and one of them is doing this whole thing where he's popping the jab, and it's a good-looking jab. He's getting the jab out there, and he's touching the guy to the body. He's doing, and at the end of that 2 minutes, the other guy throws a 2-punch combination, splits the guy's forehead open, and breaks his nose. We would go, damn, that fool got his ass kicked. That's what we would all do. We'd sit here and go, that guy who just got his forehead split open and got his nose busted, he just got beat up. That's what happened. There's nothing visible on the other dude. And nobody has to be taught that. We would naturally, instinctually look at it and go, damn, that sucks to be that dude.
Yeah.
It sucks to be him. I wouldn't want to be him, right? And the truth is, boxing is no different. Boxing is no different. When you watch two men fight in a boxing fight, and that happens, the answer is the guy that you didn't want to be at the end of that 3 minutes, that guy is the one who lost the round. And sometimes you can't tell. And anything else is illogical. And I'm not saying that you're wrong, because the truth is you guys have to go according to what the appropriate criteria are for California State.
But,
so they
but
tell you
it's
how
all
to do
over,
it.
though. All over the United States.
Or,
it's
or
a
anywhere.
10-9.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know the man personally. I'm going to speak on it. I hope I might even get chin checked on it. And, Teddy Atlas. Great commentary, but he's always bad-mouthing us, bad-mouthing the judges, and then he's always saying that was a 10-10 round. But those ain't the rules.
Exactly.
You know what I
So
mean?
it's not Ray's fault. Yeah, like it's no referee's fault, or judge's fault for that matter. I think that it comes from the fact that all the way up through the amateur system, particularly in the amateurs, you have to pick a winner, even when a round is not easy to tell.
I mean,
Right?
Ask Ben as a trainer. Do you teach in pros, not amateurs, do you teach your fighter to throw 50 punches that don't mean nothing, or throw 4 punches that do mean something? And then how would you judge that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and sometimes it's very difficult. But that's the point. And sometimes it's really difficult to tell. And instead of forcing someone to pick someone based off of their opinion,
I think Ben
just say, no, it's even. It's even round.
Ben can tell you personally. I mean, he was involved in the last big fight like that to me, which was Triple G Canelo.
Yeah, I was going to say that. But
Yeah.
To where you can, it's who they want to win.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying that's a who do you want to win.
Yeah.
That's the rounds are close, so I just pick the guy I want to win.
Okay,
Yeah.
And I think that there's too much of
because
that.
the politics in the game, the money that's involved, and it's who they want to win.
I will say there are predicaments. There are really challenging situations for judges to be in, right? And one of them is, let's say we're that same scenario, only, wait a minute, the guy didn't get cut open. He didn't get his nose broken. It was just a really flashy combination. It looked good, but he's been getting jabbed a lot. Then you have to start trying to decipher, what does 3 of that guy's jabs mean 1 power shot? Like, how many jabs equal a power shot, right?
Well,
this is where it gets very difficult.
Who remembers the
still in the round?
Marquez and Vasquez?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Great
trilogy fights. And you know what? I'm glad I wasn't judging that.
Exactly.
I'm glad I wasn't. Because as a fan, I was watching. I was like, wow, man, these guys are just beautiful. It was artwork, bro. Artwork. That, how do they call it? The sweet science. You know what I mean? They
Exactly.
both fought so beautiful, but to judge it, I don't know, man.
See, but that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, right? If we pulled out the scorecards for Marquez Vasquez and we said, wow, all the judges had 8 of those rounds 10-10, we would all go, yeah. Right? We would, yeah, that's right. There is like 8 rounds that were 10-10 because they're extremely difficult to score. Nobody would argue with it. Nobody would argue with it.
As a judge, can a fighter still around in your eyes? Because you hear it a lot, like you said, with the commentary, oh, he stole that round. Oh, he's stealing these rounds.
In my opinion, the way we're trained in California, if he takes the last minute, the full minute, I think he could still around. I think he could steal it. But it's got to be his ring generalship. Is he throwing body shots? Is he throwing head shots? Is he doing it all different? Is one guy being an amateur fighter and the other guy's being a pro fighter? I look for all that,
Especially when that round starts evenly.
Yes.
And both are really going back and forth and doing, obviously what they need to do, but it's going back and forth.
Yeah.
That at the end of that last minute, one does that little more.
Separates himself.
And separates himself, exactly. Yeah. And separates himself. Yes, I would think that, this is where that moment of, steal the round comes in. Because what they're really telling him to do is to pick it up so he wins it. So we use stealing it, but it's really what you have to do to win that round, as opposed to just keep going the way you two were going. And when you notice that the other guy kind of gave in a little bit, You took advantage of it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. So, like, I think what you guys are describing isn't really stealing it. You know what I mean? Like, that's a legit win of the round. I think of stealing more as like the whole Sugar Ray Leonard. I'm going to throw the shoe shine in the last 30 seconds and do no damage just so the judges remember that I threw a lot of punches.
Whether I was landing them or not.
Yeah, whether I was landing them or not. That's like stealing around.
Yeah, that's stealing.
One thing Ray was saying about the fans, is to turn off that volume and to watch it without any commentary. But another thing that the fans don't see is they don't have to sit ringside and only get one angle. Where on television, you're seeing 10 to 12 different angles from every single camera, where a judge is sitting directly underneath lights at a bad angle. If you've ever sat ringside, people think, I'm going to get some ringside seats and those are going to be the best. The ringside seats, because they're floor seats, those aren't the best damn seats.
No.
It's very hard to watch a fight sitting ringside. And you're looking at it at an angle. You're having to move around and make do with the referee being in the damn way half the round.
Hey, watch out.
So I'm just saying, man. I mean,
get out of the way, right?
So as a judge,
it's
tough. I mean, they want to give judges a hard time, but they don't have the luxury of sitting in front of a 75-inch TV.
Yeah, exactly.
drinking a cold one and having somebody standing in their way the whole time.
And watching their back.
Exactly.
That's right.
When they're throwing, you're sitting on one side of the ring, and you're really watching the other guy's back.
Yeah.
And you're seeing one of them where the TV, like you say, then you're watching the whole thing.
Yeah, and I will say, just to be fair, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I think that there's just some problems with the system of judging, the way that we enforce judging in boxing that results in more bad scorecards than there need to be. But a lot of times, the result, when you hear this, you get people go into some crazy wild theories about people being paid and all this different stuff. There's so many conspiracy theorists.
I don't know how it was in the old days. I mean, I know the LaMotta story and all that, but 21 years I've been in the pros, and I personally have never seen nothing. And again, to brag on California, to brag on Andy Foster, every show from the Quiet Canyons, the small club shows, to the DoubleTree, to the Staples Center, we have meetings after the show is over, and he'll point you out. Hey, if Ben Lira was a judge, Ben, why did you score that round like that? From the other two judges, and you got to give an answer. And if you don't, believe me, you won't be working the next show.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I think, like you mentioned Teddy Atlas, so I'll invoke Teddy's name as well. I love Teddy.
I said just his little comment. Don't get him mad at me.
No, I'm not trying to get him
mad
at you.
He'll rip me apart on
but
TV.
And of course everybody loves Teddy. Teddy's also a
Teddy's good. He's
fellow podcaster now, very entertaining TV personality.
Yeah.
So he does a lot of stuff. I don't have bad things to say about Teddy, but he is one who tends to, after any
he's just
controversial
educating
decision,
the fans wrong.
Yeah, like
those ain't the rules.
After any controversial decision, it's always like corruption. Like there's all this money, people have their favorites, they have all this, and I just feel like it can't be as rampant as for instance he makes it sound.
Yeah.
He makes it sound like every fight is being bought and paid for.
Even the head of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, right? He's a former FBI guy.
Yeah,
It's like, so he knows about investigations. He knows about the law.
Yeah.
These guys ain't getting paid, man. These guys ain't getting paid off. It ain't. De La Hoya isn't writing anybody a check. So
no, he isn't.
Exactly.
Canelo can win.
And speaking on that,
I mean,
again, California again. Andy Foster says, when you're working, you're not to be out there taking photos with that fighter, this fighter, that promoter, that movie star. If you're not working, you do what you want, but you're still held accountable. But again, we're always under scrutiny. We're always under the light. Watch what you do. Watch what you do.
Yeah, I think that's great because.
But let's be honest. Excuse me. But let's be honest. Would Ben Lira, the top trainer and one of the top trainers in the world, would have took my son on if I didn't know him? But because I know him, he said, "Hey, Adrian still had a spar for him."
Sure. Yeah. He had to prove himself.
Yeah, he had to prove himself. But because Ben knew me, okay, I'll give your son a shot. Come spar,
And that's something we were talking about when we were off of camera, as far as you, Ben, and telling fighters, yeah, you're gonna make it, or you know what, maybe you should find something else. How brutally,
Yeah, that's what he told me. Hey, stop, guy. You're gonna break my heart, man.
how brutally honest do you have to be with some of these people that come into your gym and want to turn professional?
I think that has to come with your conscience. And I think, and of course the experience falls into play. You've been in this business a long time. You see the needs. You see what, maybe what can be developed and what can't. Whether it comes from desire, whether it comes from determination. Of course, they kind of go together. And the commitment you're going to give and all that all goes together. But you still have to visualize how far he can go with just as a judgment call. You have to. I think you have to do that. I was watching this thing on the Dodgers and on the pictures of how when they have a problem, when they're a little off, and the patience that you have to deal. But you also know what they can do when they're on, and you sort of have to put that into perspective when you're dealing with a fighter. You have to, know that when he's on, he can do this and do that. When it becomes very difficult for them and they're just trying so hard, but it doesn't work for them, you need to answer that. I mean, you need to give them that answer. You have to, because other than that, you're just leading them out to pray. And if you have any like I said, it goes back to the conscience. Where's it going to go? The other part of it is you represent him. So obviously, when he doesn't do what, and he doesn't develop, it's on you. If he doesn't show what he can, what is expected of him, it's on you. So all those matters come into play, and to have to answer that, it's best to go directly to the point, and either we can continue, or it's best that we can't. You're not going to be protecting them all the time because they don't have those qualities, because it's falsifying their thoughts, what they believe in themselves, and it's just a better deal. I feel that if somebody can't do it, I do that a lot. I mean, I get involved with somebody bringing me a kid, and the first thing I'm going to say is, let me have him for a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you whether I want to work him. And I'm not, not being respectful for the young man or the person that brought him to me. It's just the fact that I want to see that he has those talents in my eyes and my thoughts and what I feel in the experience and stuff like that putting together, that can he go that way?
Did you ever have the opposite, where you had somebody that was just so damn talented, but didn't have a good work ethic, but would get in the ring and just kick everybody's ass? Just lazy, just talented, natural talent, but didn't really want to work because they were just big-headed and knew, well, I'm going to get in the ring.
Say it was me,
anyways.
Ben. Say it was me.
Yeah. And he just listened to other people. But I do. I don't want to give a name of an individual that was brought to me about 2 years ago, signed by Golden Boy, and the kid's from Texas, but was one of the top amateurs in the 2016 trials.
I remember that story, yeah.
And yet you're going to bring me this kid, and then you sign him. You feel that with what he's done, it's the future kid in boxing. And then as you start to work with him, you find out that his overwhelming thoughts of he's already there, he already knows that he's already going to have the dancing girls in front of him, the mariachi group playing in front, and all that, just tells you a little bit of what he doesn't really realize what this sport has to have. I call it respecting the sport. I tell a fighter, you have to respect this sport. And to respect it is that it's working hard, dedication, all those things that, that we need to have. And never cheat on the sport, because it's going to catch you back. It's going to get back in the long run. You're going to pay for this. And so obviously, like I said, you see him, You want to correct it, but it seems that they're already too ahead of themselves. And is it going to work for them? Probably not, because they're going to end up in the short end. And maybe they could come back. And you see a lot of them right now with big names. And again, I don't want to point this one and that one and that one. But to say, see, you believe so much that you just don't need anything else but just be in the ring, obviously has backfired on you. And now, you're open now to the public of how, you think you're this and you think you're that. And it doesn't show when you fight.
Today in boxing, the modern, particularly athletes who've experienced some success and are moving on, there are a number of different voices that they're hearing. If you have a young man, undoubtedly you have voices coming from their parents, but you have the concepts of strength and conditioning coaches. Maybe not you, Ray, but I'm sure
I
some,
didn't want Ben to give me the eye
some
there.
parents are probably more vocal than others. And you have the concept of a strength and conditioning coach. You have nutritionists, if you're fortunate enough to be able to actually endeavor and have these things. And then you have the presence of social media where, potentially thousands of people are telling people who they should be fighting, when they should be fighting, at what stage in their career. How many voices is too many in the corner?
Wow. I don't like any voices in the corner.
That's right.
Just you?
Just me.
Yeah.
I mean, real quick, Ben, I remember growing up in Ben's gym. It's so disciplined. You can ask Steven, his grandson, a great fighter in his own time. But when Ben would corner, you never heard people on the side, hey, do this. Hey, it was one voice only. It wasn't, I go to some gyms today, I won't mention names, I mean a lot of gyms. You have like 15 voices yelling when they're sparring. I go, how can you hear all that? How could you listen to that? It's just, with Ben, it was just always one.
It's a chemistry. I tell him, you know what, I work with you every day. I'm gonna guide you. I'm the leader of the orchestra. All of you can play. But that leader is going to tell you when you're going to play and when you're going to come on and when you're going to go off. And you're going to let somebody else take over there. So when we deal with this in the ring, I'm the leader. And you have to believe. The key to success is believe and trust. So if you have those two things of believing and trust, you have to trust me, and I have to believe that you're going to follow everything that I give you. And then we're going to take it to whatever, as far as my experience and your knowledge and your skill is going to take you. So when you start involving other people that have different ideas and different thoughts, that have not been involved in your training methods and what you do and what you expect of them, and what they really know you can do and what you can't do, what's the sense of that one? Where does that going to take you? I've had people tell me, they say, a kid will tell me, or I'm at a show, and they'll say, hey, so how am I doing? How did I do? I said, you did good. I said, but who's your coach? Or who's your trainer? So, okay, come here. Have him come here. Because they think that, this is the old man. He knows everything, right? Okay, so then they'll bring the kid. And I want the coach, and I'm gonna tell that young man, I'm gonna say to him, so how do you like your coach? He goes, yeah, great. So let me tell you something that's gonna really help you, and this is the key to success. You have to believe in that man that's working with you, whether he does it my way, his way, or whichever way he does it. You have to believe in him, and you have to have trust in him. Understand this, son, because if you don't, how can you believe in yourself? How can you believe that you're going to go and do that confidence level will take place, all those other things, all those little requirements, like I said, that chemistry that works together to be, and then it's going to take you as far as you're going to go. Obviously not, even if you had that, it's not, everybody's not made to be that superstar. So, that's why I'm strong on anybody interfering. And it's not interfering. It's just, do your job. Your job is to do this.
That's right.
Your job is to do that.
Stay in your own lane.
And stay, yeah.
So with that being said, though, I'm going to hit on Jojo Diaz. Okay. Jojo was brought up by his dad. He was bullied as a kid, great amateur, U.S. Olympic team, signed with Golden Boy, championship level contender. But his father knew there was only a certain distance that he could take him before bringing you into camp. How does something like that play out? How does something like that work?
That's a touchy one. Only because, Jojo's been in our gym, my gym, since he was 10 years old. So, I mean, I don't know how it takes, how people can feel or think that he learned from the
YouTube.
Gotcha.
YouTube and all that. There's no way. There's no way. Okay.
A perfect example.
And that's fine. And that's all we'll say about that.
And a
Yeah,
perfect
it's-
example. Ben will tell me sometimes, "Oh, look at what that fighter's doing," or he should do this. But you could tell me all day long, if I don't know when to apply it or how to apply it, it goes through one ear out the other, because I don't know the knowledge that Mr. Lira Ben has. You know what I mean? So, with all due respect to Mr. Diaz, I don't see it. I don't see it. But hey, it's obviously working, I guess. He's gonna be fighting soon. But I'm just saying, if that's the case, I would have trained Adrian. I've been in boxing since 8 years old, Ben, but I don't know when to apply it.
Many people would have tried too in your position.
You know what I mean?
I think many men would have tried in your
Because
position to train him.
you've come on in several fighters as far as like an assistant trainer.
Right.
Triple G, for instance, a lot of Abel's fighters. You've been with Abel for a long time.
I started him.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So you've seen.
Come on now.
You've seen the likes of Terry Norris come through there. You've
Yeah.
seen everybody.
Yeah.
So, how close are you and Abel, and how is that relationship between you guys?
Very close. Very close. They said he's had comments with whether it was on HBO and them and they didn't. They had no knowledge of that. And we were training, and G was, I don't remember who G was fighting, Monroe or something, I think. And they said, so we noticed that you have Ben as your assistant. He said, he's the one that taught me. I started as an amateur with him. He was my coach. And from there on, with the Lupe Aquina era, I worked every fight. Ben always, he told me that I couldn't make it in boxing, I said I still love the sport, and I want to stay in the sport, and I want to continue in the sport. I love doing this. And so I made him my assistant. And I called him the enforcer, which he has on his plates of his truck. He said, you know why I have that? He's because this is the man that gave it to me. He said, you have to enforce what you do. And when we'd go anywhere, obviously I would say to him, hey, I don't want nobody talking to so-and-so. I don't want nobody involved with this and that, because I've got it. I'll take care of that. Because Abel's as you see, he can be commanding guy.
Just a little,
a little bit. But anyway, going back to the fact that knowing, being involved with the corners, I think most of them, Sullivan Barrera, and other fights, I can go to different guys that they'll say, well, can he just work the corner? I feel that they're asking me that. And again, you go back to senior, I'm talking about Joseph. And even now, every time he gets any kind of directions, he will turn and say, how did I do? So how do I do it? And it's going to be that command or that direction that I'm going to give him, but never interfering with the father. I love the father dearly. As we started, I would guide him and show him, and of course anything that Big Joe would, kind of not be sure of, he'd say, okay, so when he's throwing this, and all that, the training part. Of course, no, but see, he reaches, or he does this, or he's waiting a little too long. That's what I was there for. And I was there because I'm looking and this kid being that superstardom kid, right? But still allowing, at that point and during this time, allowing the father to grow in the sport, to learn, because our concern is Joseph Diaz. And to me, it's the same thing. It's not the ego thing behind it. It's not. It's just the fact that it's going to make him a better kid. It's going to make him a better fighter. And that makes his dad that super trainer, that trainer of the year, whatever you want to say, that's fine with me. That's fine. But the one that gained everything is the son.
Yeah, and you know, that just goes to show too, as far as when HBO boxing was around, Showtime Boxing, DAZN, you hear the names, you hear the Robert Garcia, you hear the Abel Sanchez, you hear these names thrown out there, and you don't hear Ben Lira. And that just goes to show on your part, you're a man that sits in the back. You don't, like you said, you don't really, it is what it is. If it's about me, it's not about me, it's about the fighter, you know. And I think that's what makes you so special in the sport. Of course, people in Southern California know who you are because it's a small boxing community here in Southern California, but it just goes to show the type of person that you are, you know. I mean, of course, your fighters bring you up. Luis Feliciano, you know, Ray, for instance, with his, hey, I'm bringing Ben with me. No problem. We love Ben.
Well, let me say one thing, too, though. He's known over the world. They send fighters to him to train for a fight.
Yeah.
That says a lot right there.
And
you know what I mean?
And again,
he might not corner him for the fight, but Ben, can you work with this kid and send him back to us?
And again,
it's almost like the disciplined trainer, you know? You know what? You're going to Ben's. You're going to Ben's.
And again, that's in the boxing community.
Yeah, the boxing community.
Of course, that's in the boxing community.
Right,
but what I'm
yeah.
saying is, you know, on a global platform, we
Yeah.
have the quote unquote, you know, the casual fans.
Yes.
You know that they don't know. You throw that name out there, see him walking through the mall, unless you're familiar with the sport, will you know who he is?
And you know, when you're talking about Robert Garcia, where did he start? Started with me.
There you go.
That's right.
Yeah, Robert Garcia. Eduardo was a man driving a van, taking the field workers from where they're, you know, were put up to the fields and bringing them back. And I had the gym on Granada, and I turned his son, which was Danny, the first kid that turned pro in the family. And then, of course, from Danny came Robert, Ken, Mikey. But Eduardo, if I showed you pictures of this and that, you'd say, you know, who's that man sitting next to Robert? I show it every once in a while. And you see a little kid, and I'm rapping Danny, and there's a little kid that's 7 years old, and the dad's right behind him. And I said, who's that? And they'll say, I don't know. I said, well, that's Danny Garcia, that's Robert Garcia, and that's the dad. Wow, how old was Robert? And Robert will give you the stories is about fighting in, where was it? We fought in Chino, and he was 6.5, maybe 7 years old. And they asked, and I had Danny was going to box as an amateur, and Danny was going to box on that day. And so Tony Serta, I don't know if you ever heard of Tony Serta.
Tony Pomona.
Yeah, Pomona. I mean, I said Chino Pomona. Said, hey, you want to fight that little kid that you got right there, which was Robert. And I said, oh, let me ask him, because he would go to the gym with Danny, of course, and they'd be training and stuff, but he was 6, 7 years old. In fact, they lived in my house. So he said, yeah, I'll fight him. Anyway, we got him in there. He tells the story, too. If you talk to him, he'll tell him the story about when you have to go to the restroom. He said he had already eaten, drank a big old Coke, and then I said, okay, maybe you can go in there. So we get into the first round, and he finishes the first round. He says, but I have to go to the bathroom. I said, well,
after the first round?
After the first round. I said, okay, well, you know what you got to do? You better go out there and just throw a lot of punches so we can stop this fight, and then you can go to the restroom. Well, lo and behold, that's what he did. He went out there and stormed that other little kid. They stopped this fight. I take his gloves off real quick. He doesn't even have to wait for who's going to win this fight in the decision. He just shoots out of that ring because he's got to go to the restroom. And that's a true story. And he'll tell you that himself. He says, you know what? One of my fights I can never, you know, and the beginning of my starting in boxing, because that was, and going back to you saying about knowing a little bit about the fighters, when he was young and when Robert was maybe about 7 or 8 years old, we're eating at this restaurant. He comes over and he says to me, how true this is. He says, Ben, he says, my brother's not going to be a champion. I'm going to be the champion. And, you know, never, that has been in my head since that happened, that every time we get together, it's a discussion that we bring up about. And Daniel will say, how did you know I wasn't going to be the champion? And he was going to be the champion. It just, you know, he just was such a driving little boy.
So, speaking of young men, Adrian, I have a question for you, actually. So, obviously, you're very athletic. You played multiple sports and things like that. Ray mentioned you played football and things like that. And you're young in your career. So, you're 5-0. You're undefeated, which means that, there's still obviously some development and some learning that's going on, despite the fact that, you're athletically gifted and talented, as Ben would say. So, what are the types of things in terms of opponents that you're looking at or that you're facing now? What are the types of things that you hope to achieve in the very near future in the sport? Or what types of opponents do you want to face to help facilitate your growing at the professional level and getting a step above where you are now?
I just want to gain experience. So whichever fighter that is going to give me the most experience in that fight, that's what I'm looking for.
And is there a specific type of fighter that you guys have in mind? Is there someone, have you faced, for instance, left-handed fighters? Have you faced different stylistically? Or are we not at a point where you're looking for those types of challenges? What do you guys think?
Well, the last fight that he had, I don't know if any of you saw it, was a very difficult guy. And I want to give him, in the beginning, guys that have a little bit of experience, as opposed to beginners or guys or young fighters that are in the same stage as he is starting out, even though he's more gifted, more skills. But I'd rather have the ones that are a little more experienced because they're going to teach him. He's going to grow from every fight this is the idea, is grow from every fight that he gets or that he has to go. The last fight that he had, obviously I saw the guy he was going to fight. Tom and them said, hey, we have this one and that one. But they had this kid that was tall, lefty, righty, likes to go from one side of the ring to the other and doesn't want to be stationary, wants to go in there. So I said to them, I want this one. He goes, he's kind of awkward and he's kind of experienced. I said, that's okay. That's what I want. I want him to understand that the fighters are not always going to stay in front of him.
Yeah.
They're going to give him difficulty. And if he doesn't start to learn that now, and we get to a point that then those fights, the fights that are going to come, later on in the career, and he hasn't adapted to them or does not have any idea how to adapt to them, it's going to be the wrong time of how far we've gone to be able to challenge that. So we want to challenge it now and probably learn. Of course, when you see that, you also see that the guy's not a big prospect coming in that can do that. No, you sort of have to kind of evaluate what you want to take. But every fight, like this one here, is give me somebody that's going to want to stay and mix with him a little bit, and that's the guy I want. I don't care if he's this and that.
That's knowledge right there, guys.
No, exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing nowadays, is that instead of trying to develop these fighters and using measuring sticks after each fight, you get some of these guys that want to pad their records, man. Yep. They want to look good. They want the flashy knockouts. They're fighting these guys from TJ that don't have any experience, man.
Hey, easy there, bro.
No, I'm just letting you know, man. And because this is real. And
no,
and you guys know, you guys both know, you working for the State Athletic Commission, and you as a trainer know that after 10 fights, you go from 4-rounders to 6 fighters, to 6-rounders. After 6-rounders, you go to 8-rounders. And when you get to a certain level, when you're 16, 17-0 with 15 knockouts, there's going to be a point where, like he says, you get quote-unquote exposed as a fighter because you just haven't fought that type of competition or that level of competition yet because you've been too busy with the Instagram, the Instagram knockouts that are going viral. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen or it can't happen against somebody with a little bit more experience because, sure, those knockouts happen. They do. But when you just don't take it serious enough and you're just throwing no names and nobodies to these guys, that's not what the sport's about.
They don't learn. They're not going to learn, and when that time comes, as you said, they're going to be exposed, and then you're going to have to go backwards. And the idea is to always be going forward, a step by step by step, but you're going forward. And as you're going forward, if there's going to be a loss in your career or two, let it be in the beginning, because hopefully you learn from that, and that stage is where you want to be able to learn, what the difficulties are, as opposed to being 10-0 and finding out that this guy did this guy that. Even now, when somebody brings up the fact, even with Luis, there was times in where he said that guy's kind of awkward, or he does this and that. I said, well, you know what the answer to that is? He said, what's that, Ben? Don't let him do it.
Good advice.
Make a
sound advice.
Fight your style.
Yeah. And Adrian, would you say that are you a boxing fan? Like, have you?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay. You'd be surprised the number of fighters who come on who aren't actually boxing fans. Like, they have no interest in boxing as a sport. But like, so are there guys now that you like to watch and that you like to keep up on?
Yeah, my stablemate Luis Feliciano. He's is a big inspiration to me. It's like a big brother to me.
He just was coming off a great knockout.
Yeah,
win.
huge knockout on DAZN.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was DAZN, I think 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
2 weeks ago. That was great. You guys should check that out. If you
Good
have DAZN, you can check it out.
Best looking referee was refereeing it too. Who was that? Oh, my God.
It was on the top rank card, and
that was me, eh?
I said down in Pachanga.
He's grown a lot, and here you go as a trainer when you say about making and that believe in the trust. Something that really makes it even a better performance by him. That kid weighed 160 when he stepped in the ring.
And looked 162.
And we knew that he was going to be way over. We gave him all that because obviously he didn't comply with the agreement on the contract, right? But where I'm going to is, as we got to that and we realized that, and making sure that he believes in himself and trusts me to follow up and say, okay, let's do this. My point to him was, there's going to be obstacles in the road, and there's going to be times that you're going to be put in these situations, but the cream rises to the top. It doesn't matter. We're here. We're going to do what we have to do, and we're going to find the answers that we're looking for as we go into the fight, because you're going to know when you're going to. In other words, you're going to know when you're going to put your hard punches in, when you're going to hold some back, when you're going to just have the patience to know when you're really going to let it go, or how you're going to do it. And those little qualities have to be in the individual to say, I trust you, you're going to guide me, and then I go from there.
I think that, well, actually, is there anything else you want to go through, Stax?
We've talked about the refereeing. We've
talked about the refereeing.
Adrian and fighting with 360 and coming up. Well, you know what? You're fighting some of those cards with Tom under Tom's, promotion company. But is there anybody that you guys want to sign with? Do you guys want to sign with DAZN, with Top Rank? Is it just a business aspect? What's going to be best financially for you guys, or is there somebody special you want to sign with?
I think right now, as we've been discussing, is and with Ray, because he pays the bills. So I got
Mama over there.
yeah, and Mom over there. Yeah. So to understand that we're in the development stages, and at this point right now, we want to kind of develop that, and it doesn't matter who it is, but obviously because I'm involved with Tom and with G and everything under the promotions before, and I've been with him ever since G came in, that given the opportunity to be fighting as frequent as we have, already having 5 fights, and we haven't even had a year. By the end
under
of
a year, that's been
under a year.
Nice,
and by the
sir.
by the time we get to the end of the year, we're going to have maybe 10. So stop and think about how
well done.
How he's going along. So it doesn't, at this point. Yes, Tom, we're working together, but the fact that it's the idea of getting the main idea is to get as many fights as we can with him, so that he can develop, so he can grow from that. And then after that, when he's made that level of who he is, then whoever wants to approach that, and I'm sure they will. You just let time and let his development speak for itself. And then from there you go, and it's not about choosing anybody. It's not about being already one-sided to one thing. No, it's the future of him and where it's going to go and who is willing to do more for his career as far as where it's going to go.
Anything else?
I'm good.
You're good? So
Yeah.
if Stacks and I box after this, will you ref?
Yeah, for
All right,
sure,
cool.
man. Hey, I just want to thank you guys for having us on. My son Adrian, Ben Lira, I really appreciate it, guys.
I appreciate you guys coming down.
Thank
I
you.
also want to give you an opportunity to plug anything if we should, for instance, be following you on Instagram, social media, anything like that. You want to start at the end? Adrian, is there somewhere
Yeah,
we
I
can
only
catch
have an
you?
Instagram. You guys can follow me at _2 code Corona.
That's an awesome name. It is. That's a good one. And you guys, is there anywhere we should be following?
One of the main supporters to myself and obviously our fighters is the Teamster Union, and they're big followers. They've obviously been involved with our program. Without them, it wouldn't be as successful as it's been. But again, without them supporting Adrian, Luis, is why we're getting what we're getting. Obviously, you have to know that you have to put people in those seats.
Yeah.
And without that, right? They're searching. Well, we sort of they're the ones that help us do that, and we're grateful for that. So
Shout out to the
Thank you,
Teamster
yeah.
Union then.
Yeah,
Thank you
shout
very
out.
much.
That's right. I actually work for the Teamsters. I'm an organizer, and Ron Herrera, Randy K-Mac, I really appreciate you guys for supporting Luis and Ben and my son Adrian. And well, you know how it goes. You
Yeah,
want to
man,
live a better life, work union, bro.
And not just that, not just the fighters there, but actually a big shout out to the Teamsters for everything that you guys did and for what Ben did and what you did for the WBC amateur tournament.
Yeah.
So we really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, that was all Ben,
It
really.
was a great show. I was out there at South Almonte High School this past June. We had a great weekend of amateur boxing out there, and a lot of it had to do because of the unions.
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
because of
Mr.
the Teamsters. I
Mr.
shouldn't say
Suleiman
unions,
and Nancy.
the
And
Teamsters. So,
Yeah.
man, thank you guys. Thank the Teamsters. Thank you, Ben, for that. Where can they follow you on social media, man? You want people following you on social media or not?
no, my wife doesn't like that. No, I'm just playing. She just
No new high-nots following you on social media?
No, you know what? If you're a boxing fan, you can follow us at Ray and Nini Corona. Ray and Nini Corona.
If you're watching the show, I hope you're a boxing fan.
Yeah, there you go. and not just tuning in because
otherwise,
of
what's
Sexy
up?
Ray,
Yeah, of course.
You can follow me on Supreme Boxing on all social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Also here on Beat the Count with my
There you
host,
go.
Sean.
Thank you.
Also, you can follow the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. We got a great class this year. We just opened up our museum in Las Vegas at the Boulevard Mall inside of Heads Up Vegas. We have a big class this year being inducted, including Bernard Hopkins, Bobby Chacon, Terry Norris, the Pocket Rocket Wayne McCullough, Leroy Haley. We have a great class being inducted this year. Make sure to get your tickets for the Hall of Fame. It's coming up the second weekend of August. It's going to be a big meet and greet. We have a cocktail party. Then we have the induction gala. So make sure to follow us, the NevadaBoxingHallOfFame.com.
As always, I am your most gracious host. Thank you very much. I appreciate you for being with me live on Facebook this evening. You can follow me at Beat the Count on Instagram, at Beat the Count on Facebook. And thank you, gentlemen, for the extensive education with all of the experience that you brought to us from very many different aspects of boxing. It was a most welcome change of pace for the show. I really appreciate your coming down, and
Thank you.
hope to do it again sometime. Thanks.
Thank
That's
you.
all I got for you. Peace.